Hello, this is Bobby with Jamal, Amy, and Michelle. For our first podcast assignment, we interviewed Andrew Roback on his study, How Constituents Lobby Members of Congress on Twitter. First, Professor Roback shared his motivation for the study.
18 months ago or so, Professor Hemphill, who I'm just going to call Libby, she approached me, asked if I would help her out examining some of the study data that she had accumulated, and they were just tweets directed at members of Congress.
He then went on to describe the infancy of the study.
One of the questions we wanted to ask was, are there any patterns we can infer from the corpus of tweets that we had? And I think I just took about maybe 200 tweets and just looked and saw if there were any common approaches to lobbying members of Congress. And there were, and to our surprise. And that's when we wrote our first piece, which was a poster that we presented at CSCW.
Roback emphasized how hashtags can play an important role in how opinions are voiced on Twitter.
So if I want to go online, if I'm watching Top Chef, right? If I want to go online and just read about people talking about Top Chef, the hashtag that the company is suggesting I use will allow me to do that. And that's interesting, right? But what's more interesting, I think, is what happens when it's not companies or the government even, Barack Obama's Twitter account, telling you how to frame your discussion, when people are doing it themselves and they come up with their own hashtags, right? And those hashtags get popular, they start trending, and then they are dictating the discussion a little bit.
Of course, there is a 140 character limit on Twitter, which Roback described the effects of.
One of our reviewers rightly pointed out that there is a character limit, and if you're going to only have so many characters to express your argument, why would people go through all this trouble to construct elaborate frameworks for their argument, right? You know, come up with these different strategies. Why wouldn't they just say what they mean? Because you have to get right to the point on Twitter. I think our study is interesting in that it shows that people do take the precious characters that they're given and devote them to these strategies. If you only have 140 characters, that's about one good sentence to get your point across. Maybe two if you're economical with your character choices. You use short words. If you're going to set up a lengthy construction like, an analogy is a good example, I think, right? One good example we had from our paper, I think someone equated immigration laws with gay marriage in the United States. They were responding to someone's tweet, a member of Congress's tweet, I believe. The member of Congress said, we can't have different laws for immigration in all 50 states. And the user responded, why not? We have that for gay marriage, right? And the implication is, it's stupid with respect to gay marriage, and it's stupid with respect to immigration. There should be one national policy for the whole thing. And as I recall, they were pro for both. And that's a complex construction because you have to include the original argument and then respond to it in an economical way. But it has much more zing, pizzazz, I don't know what you want to call it, rhetorical, I guess the smart way to say it would be rhetorical impact, right, or persuasive power. It has more persuasive power than just saying, pass immigration reform now. So I think the interesting finding with the character limit is that, yes, there are limited characters, and users are very conscious of the limitations of that genre, and even with knowing that they have very limited space, they still take the time to come up with these very well-constructed arguments.
Finally, the question we've all been waiting for. Does Twitter have any effect in our government?
So this is the $10,000 question. Now we know the landscape, right? We know what people are saying to members of Congress. And the question is, what are members of Congress saying back to them? And how can we measure efficacy, whether or not this is successful?
The results of the study are, unfortunately, negative. That is, Congress people generally do not respond at all to what people tweet at them, including both direct responses and legislative action. Finally, Roback had a word about how Twitter can be a double-edged sword.
Twitter can be both, right? It can be very empowering for individual users, and it can also be not restricted, but dictated by the party who wants to promote the conversation, whether that's politics or Top Chef.
This has been Bobby, Jamal, Amy, and Michelle talking to Professor Roback about how Twitter can affect legislative action.